This is the 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzaro, episode number 26.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzaro.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jeff Pellizzaro, the host of the 18 Strong Podcast. Welcome to the show. Welcome back. And we've got some great stuff for you on this show today. We have one of the original members from the Titleist Performance Institute and the CEO and president of Lance Gill Performance, who is Mr. Lance Gill. And today, Lance and I discuss a lot of different things, basically some of the different differences between professional golfers, amateur golfers, what the amateurs are doing differently than the pros, and why there's such a big gap, and what are some of the things that you can implement into your game to basically start playing better, practicing better, and really just kind of getting your mind around what's going on in your practice sessions to then take that and improve on the course. And that goes both for the fitness side as well as the physical and technique side of everything that you're doing for your golf game. Lance is, I think, one of the great personalities in the world of golf and fitness. Just a great guy, very down to earth, who, has some great stories, has been all over the world, has worked with golfers of basically every skill level and ability, from young junior golfers to the amateur golfers, the country clubbers, up to the highest of levels on the PGA Tour, LPGA Champions Tour, all those kinds of players. And he's pretty much seen everything and has seen the best and the worst, which he alludes to, and basically that gives him a great vantage point of being able to work with anybody and see what works for different people, and what the best are doing, and how we can then implement that into our games as hackers out there on the golf course. So I just want to jump right into this episode. We've got some great stuff. Lance covers a ton of great information, shares some experiences that he's had, working with some of the best and traveling all over the world with Titleist and the Titleist Performance Institute. So enjoy this episode with Lance Gill. All right, Lance Gill, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, man.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking the time to come on. I know we've been a little back and forth with you traveling around the world and trying to get our time scheduled, but thanks for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me. I know it's been a little bit of a hassle getting scheduled, but, good things come to those who wait, I hear. So I've been waiting to be on this for a while, so I'm hoping good things come to me now.
Very nice. Well, for all of you guys out there, I know many of you will recognize Lance's voice and his name. He is with the Titleist Performance Institute, and most of you will probably recognize him as the co-star of the Glass and Gill show on the Coach Glass podcast. But Lance also has a couple other duties in his life, including being co-director of the TPI Fitness Advisory Board. He's taught over 10,000 experts in fitness, instruction, medical, the medical part of the golf world, and he is also the president of Lance Gill Performance, working with tour players and golfers basically of all ages and all skill levels. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've, over the last 14 years, we've spent a lot of time working with the best in the world and the worst in the world. And that's the cool thing about my job. I don't need to focus on one or another because my job is improving movement. And the last time I checked, all golfers are humans. So humans move the same way, or should be able to move the same way, regardless of professional or amateur, from a baseline standpoint. So as long as I can help people move better, I can help them play better at whatever level.
Well, Lance, I want to give everybody just a little background into my introduction to you and why I really wanted to get you on here. Aside from all the great things that you're doing in the world of golf these days, you were pretty much the one that introduced me to the Titleist Performance Institute. When you guys came here to St. Louis several years ago, I just kind of randomly found out that TPI was coming in town. I was, working with a lot of golfers at the time, and somebody asked me, hey, are you going to this thing that Titleist is having? And I said, no, I'm not. I didn't know about it. And so you and Mark Blackburn were the presenters for that whole level one, and that's really what kind of got me ingrained in the golf fitness world, and it made me want to learn more about golf. Not growing up as a golfer, but really loving the game and kind of getting hooked on the game. And so I'd love for you to give us a little bit of background on how you got into the golf world, how you got involved with TPI, maybe a little background story of how TPI came about, and then, the transition of you also now having Lance Gill Performance.
Well, no worries. That was a funny. I'll get back to the roots of me in a second, but I remember that trip to St. Louis. It was I believe it was during the Blues playoff run, and one of the nights that we were there, Mark Blackburn was moaning and groaning, saying there's nothing to do in St. Louis. So I actually got us tickets to the St. Louis Blues Game 5. And that was the game they clinched. I can't remember who it was over, but it was an amazing environment. We had such a good time there. That's a trip we'll never forget. So it was cold as heck, though. I mean, you can turn the temperature up at any time.
Well, I remember coming in the next morning thinking you guys looked pretty good for going to a Blues game and staying out who knows how late.
We did stay out later than we should, but we put on a good face that day. So that's why we work in partners, because you always got to pick each other up every so often.
Nice.
But it was fun. It was definitely a fun time. Regarding my background, I come from a family of sports medicine. Both my parents are physical therapists. My aunt's an orthopedic surgeon. And, I spent my childhood growing up at the dinner table talking about anterior tib pain and bursitis and all that stuff. So I've had a background to the medical side for a long time. And when I went to college, I had a choice. I originally wanted to be a physical therapist, and the path wasn't set for that for whatever reason. And I got into athletic training as a side note. So playing college soccer and golf, I was exposed to the athletic training population for a long time. And I just migrated naturally into that field of preventative medicine, rehabilitation, wound care, emergency management, and, and strength and conditioning as well. So graduating undergrad, I went and got my master's at University of Pittsburgh, where they had a program in athletic training with a focus in sports medicine. So I got my master's in science there. And the cool thing is I got to work with Greg Norman's physical therapist and trainer, Pete Dreyevich. And I got to spend 2 years with this guy, and he was one of the precursors or founding fathers for modern day sports science for golf. And Greg Norman has always been very interested in the body and how it affects his game. He's had a lot of injuries in his life, and he's always interested in, how to, number one, get people not to go down the same path as he did from an injury standpoint. Becoming the world's number one is a different story, but he was really into that. And so Pete led a charge along with Dr. Lephart down at the lab, and we just did a lot of biomechanical research along with our job studies at the high schools and college. And it was funny, the last 2 months of school, I was coming down to the wire to graduate, and Pete Dreyevich looks at me and goes, "So what are you going to do when you graduate?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You're graduating in 2 months. What's your plan?" And I was like, "Oh my God." And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a single plan in the world. I was enjoying college. I thought college goes on forever. And then bam, all of a sudden he just kind of shook it up. And I said, "I'll tell you what I don't want to do. And that's sit on a sideline of a JV basketball game for the next 30 years. No disrespect to JV basketball, but I've done it for almost 8 years at this point, and I'm about done with it." And he said, "Well, okay, so what do you want to do?" I said, "If I had to choose, I'd like to play tour golf." And Norman was there, and he looks at me, he said, "Well, how's your putting?" I go, "Not good." He goes, "Exactly." So he goes, "What else could we do?" So Norman basically, he kind of gave it to me saying, "You're not playing tour golf." And I got it. I was that was a pipe dream. But I said, "Well, I'd like to, Pete, do what you do. You're in this world of golf. I've played college golf. I'm a high level golfer, and I love the game. And, I think this would be fun." He goes, "This is awesome. But the problem is nobody's doing it. There's maybe 2 or 3 people in the world that are even considering this whole field." And I was like, "Great." I go to get my master's, and I come out without a job. What is my dad going to say? So that's what I was worried about. But Pete kind of had this. He heard some rumors from one or another person that this guy down in D.C. was opening up a golf-specific training center, the first of its kind in the world, and this crazy chiropractor named Dr. Greg Rose. So I was like, well, if that's the case, I mean, I got to go check it out. He goes, that would be where I start. So I got in the car that night and drove 6 hours from Pittsburgh to DC, showed up at Dr. Rose's front step, and they're in the construction phase at this beautiful facility in Maryland, DC area. And he's like, hey, how can I help you? And I'm like, this is who I am. This is my background. We're graduating in 2 months, and I'd like to know if there's any chance I can come and, work for you. And before I even got done with my verbal resume there, he's like, you're hired. So he hired me on the spot, which I thought was awesome. And it kind of set me up for a little bit of false hope that the world was that easy moving forward into the future. But he did bring it on the back end, a little caveat, said, well, I can't pay you yet either. So I was like, oh, okay, well, you know what? It doesn't matter. If I tell my dad I got a job, I'm happy. So that was kind of where my whole career in the golf fitness, medicine, and performance world started there at Club Golf in 2001. So we really got it going back then in the dark ages and really didn't have a clue what we were doing, just off some basic principles of how the body worked and, seeing the same movement in the golf swing. Well, they had to be related. And that's where the golf screen was born. And we kind of moved up from there, and Titleist caught wind about it with young Peter Uline. We all know that Peter's dad is the CEO of Titleist. Peter's over on the European tour now. He was 8 or 9 or 10 at the time. Came in and kind of took him through the whole process. And Greg, really convinced Wally that the body was an integral part of the game of golf. Now, Wally saw it as, wait a minute, if you can help a golfer play healthier, they're going to play more golf, which means they're going to buy more products, which means Titleist is going to do much better. So I would say over the last 14 years, we have single-handedly been the reason why Titleist has made about $47 billion. So that's just a side note, of course. But that's kind of how the industry, the equipment side of it looks at it. If golfers play less golf, they're out of the game. They don't buy equipment. But on the other side of it, they don't buy memberships. The rounds played are down. Food and beverage is down. Lessons are down, and subsequently physical training is down. So just by taking care of the number one piece of equipment in golf, that's your body, we felt that you could support the entire industry as a whole. And if you fast forward from 2004 all the way to now, I think you can see the clear-cut change in how people's mentalities are. To me, Jeff, it's evident in one stat. Ball speed on PGA Tour is about 167. Ball speed coming out of college is pushing 171, 172. So the kids in college are coming out much faster, hitting it farther than the guys on tour right now that have been there forever. So that tells us the tide is changing, and what we're doing is actually producing some results from a performance standpoint. That was the longest sentence in the history of time.
Well, I mean, it just goes to show that it's such a win-win when you start working on the body. I mean, it's good for the golf companies. It's good for the game of golf. There's more guys and girls playing for longer periods of time. And people are just getting healthier. A lot of individuals that were playing golf, and that's all they did for activity or exercise. There's a lot of those people that were maybe on the fence that are now thinking, hey, maybe there is something to this fitness thing, even if it's just for the betterment of their golf game.
Well, you bring up a really good point. So from the early 2000s, we were basically going after the early adapters to anything. So the fitness freaks, the ones that really you didn't have to convince to get on board. Because at that time, golf fitness or performance was still a hokey and black art, and people just didn't believe in it, and it was taboo, if you will. So we went after the early adapters, the people that are always, the ones that buy the iPhone 6 before it comes out. And then from, the mid 2000s, I tell you what, it was tough. It was tough because now you got all the low-hanging fruit, the people that you don't have to really convince, but then it's the people that are on the sidelines paying attention saying, what can you do for me? So there was a lot of, I'm not going to say negativity, but there was a lot of doubt in our industry as to whether or not it was actually truthful that you can improve your golf game with the body. And there were a lot of naysayers, to be honest with you. So we had a lot of proving to do from 2006 all the way, even until today, we're still having to do it. But I have seen a trend shift lately that many people are coming in to sessions for evaluations, diagnostics, coaching, or even fitness with such a higher level of IQ about what they're about to experience than before, which means that the providers ourselves have to raise our game up a notch. Because, when your clients come in knowing more about ball flight laws than you do, well, shoot, you better pay attention. So I kind of, that translated to me as people really are buying into this stuff. And you know what? If they're going to buy into it, we need to be a step ahead of our clients at all times. And I think that's what moves the whole evolution of golf science forward. And to me, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've had that experience where a client comes in and, we were talking about, I think he had just been doing some flight scope stuff and he was telling me about his ball speeds. And I'm like, whoa. I'm a fitness guy. I don't know all this stuff. So, I had to go and dig into some of the stuff and still don't know nearly as much as he does in regards to, the different stats and what he's looking for. He, was talking about getting on the Sam Putt Lab and all this different stuff. But, it just shows how much more informed some of these individuals are, which I think is a cool thing to see them putting that much time and effort into it. And when you get somebody like that, that they're going to be the one when you tell them what to do in a fitness program or, you're designing a corrective exercise program. That's going to be the guy or girl that goes back and they do their stuff. And when they come back in the gym, you'll be able to test them, retest them, and see the improvements that they're making, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, it is. But they're also the one you have to. You can't BS them, for a better word. You have to be on your game. And to me, that it's not a big deal because both of us have medical backgrounds. And, anytime we bring a rehab technique to a client or an exercise, we have to have reasonings behind it. And so we grew up in that realm. But a lot of fitness people and a lot of golf instructors, that's not how they were taught. There wasn't a lot of science behind all this fitness and all this golf instruction, whereas now there is. So the more scientific approach, I think, is coming online. Heck, is being scrutinized to the nth degree in the media because of our buddy Tiger. And, people are in the current mindset saying, well, is it good because Tiger's shooting 82s? But in the long run, without this information, there may not even be the ability for Tiger to come back from his back injuries, his leg injuries, his knee injuries, because he may have to make these changes based on those injuries. We don't know. But the bottom line is golf science is improving to the point where, we can tell what's going on in a golf swing and how your body's interacting, causing that, helping it, or hurting it. And that information is priceless. The medical field would not be where it is today without that information. So I just say, why is the golf field any different? Why do we guess in the golf field? Well, we don't have to anymore. We don't have to guess. So that's where I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, it's amazing to see all the improvements and changes and technological advances that are really kind of improving the way that we look at the game from a scientific and research-based standpoint. I want to kind of backtrack a little bit on your background. So we know you and the story of TPI, and it seems like was it just in the past year or two that you kind of developed your own personality, your own company, Lance Gill Performance. I'd like to have you talk a little bit more about that.
Well, one of my roles at TPI over the 10 years I was there was to basically provide an amateur experience for our non-professional golfers, the ones that, wanted to know how the tour pros got treated, what was different. So we would take these men and women through, half day, full day, 2 day, 3 day experiences where we covered everything from club fitting to body evaluations, biomechanics, fitness training, golf training, course management, mental routines, fitness, nutrition. So it was an all-encompassing way to look at how to get better at golf. Around 2014, the company went a different direction. They said they're not going to focus on the amateur population as much with regards to the experience. So it gave me an opportunity, if you will, to kind of take that whole product down to a very nice resort down here in Southern California, the Grand, where I'm working with Sean Cox, and just streamline that into the Grand, where to me it's even a little bit better of a setting because now I have a golf course, a hotel where I can, really get a really cool golfing experience for someone that's into the game, wants to get better, and just taking the same ideals I've been doing for 10 years and just putting them in. So, at any person's development, you got to look at doing your own thing. And I've gotten lucky because I can go out on do my own thing, but I still get to teach for Titleist. I'm still on their advisory board and work closely with Dr. Rose and Dave and the guys over at TPI on a weekly basis. So I kind of have best of both worlds. I'm really blessed about that. And, my business is very simple. I want to work with amateur golfers, elite level golfers, juniors, trying to get into college. And the other arm is basically, speaking engagements. My passion in life is I love speaking. Now I have a little bit more time where I can go to country clubs and give a little, presentation on the world of human movement or fitness for golf for the memberships. And then subsequently, I can go in with the staff at that particular club, work with their golf instructors and their fitness team to show the members that this isn't two separate divisions. This is actually one cohesive unit, and kind of create a member experience that, they're not going to get anywhere else. So I do that a ton and speak a lot for federations around the world. I'm going over to Holland in about a month to talk to the PGA of Holland, and they call it Week 11 conferences. It's their big educational week per year. So that's really where I love doing. I love speaking to large groups, and I feel like if you can reach more than one person at a time, that's the best way to do it from an efficiency standpoint. So there's my 2-cent speech on that.
Sweet. That sounds awesome. Just the speaking stuff and being able to get out there and share the message with more people, I think, is what you and Jason and a lot of those guys do so well. It's not just, working individually with each different golfer or person that comes in contact with you, but the fact that you can share it from a bigger platform is very cool. So talking about the different golfers that you do work with, different levels, what are some of the biggest differences, and I know this is a pretty broad question, but biggest differences that you see in the tour players versus the recreational golfers in regards to what they should be doing fitness-wise, possibly, or practice-wise?
Oh, yeah. All right, so fitness-wise, let's talk about the biggest glaring difference. I can almost say with certainty that, over 80% of golf touring professionals do that high-level amateurs or amateurs don't do, and that's walk 6 to 8 miles a day. I'm starting to do a little bit more research onto this, but I don't see golf touring pros all that much different than a high-level athlete in college or even a scratch golfer. I do see some differences from a movement standpoint, but when I look at it in a whole, an athlete's an athlete, and I see a lot of good athletes that aren't tour golfers, and I see a lot of tour golfers that aren't good athletes. But what is different is the fact that golfers on the tour walk 6 days a week, and they're walking 6 to 8 miles a day. The simple movement of walking, in my eyes, is the separating factor from riding in a cart, because what it does is develops an entire extension pattern from the thoracic spine, the hips, core stability, cervical, deep neck flexion. They just use a movement pattern that we as humans were given the opportunity to do, which is walk. But many of us as humans neglect as we get older because we sit in carts, we sit at our desk, we're in the fetal position, we're in our lazy boys. So that to me is a big difference. And if you add that up over, what are we talking, 50 miles a week walking compared to maybe 2 for a normal sedentary amateur, that's a big difference. And, we try to go from sedentary to the vicious sport of golf. We're going to hurt ourselves, number one, and we do hurt ourselves. And number two, we're not going to get function, and that's going to be frustrating. So I don't know. I can't tell you with scientific data that because you walk, you're going to be a better golfer. But if you are mobile and you do walk, it's going to be a separating factor ultimately from you and other people that don't, because you're just more athletic. You're just more athletic. You, as well as I do, know that the glute, that hip extension pattern, is so important for athleticism. And amateurs just don't have the ability compared to pros. So if there is a differentiating factor, it's glute control, pelvic tilt, pelvic rotation, just the coordination of those, what I would say is simplistic motions that become very difficult amongst the amateur. So yeah, people are out there going, well, golf pros probably can squat 250 pounds. They can do perfect deep squats. Honestly, not all of them can, but they have the fundamental movements down more effectively than the amateurs. Now, does that answer that physical side of the question?
Well, I think it's interesting because that's kind of the first time that I've heard anybody really target in on that fact. And there's a physician here that I've worked with in St. Louis, a spinal surgeon. And I remember when I was working in the clinic, going over and doing office hours with him. And one of the first things that he would always ask the person when they came in for back issues was, how much do you walk? And, his first order of business was to get them moving, get them walking, simply for exactly the same reasons that you talked about, just activating that extensor pattern, getting their hips and pelvis to rotate a little bit, kind of stimulating some of those different muscles. So I just appreciate that was a different answer than I think 90% of people would have given, but it's something that I think is very overlooked when we're looking at our fitness level and our movement and function level.
Well, it's hugely overlooked, and not to mention the cross-crawl pattern in walking, which is the precursor for rotational development, which is the precursor to power and distance and that stupid white ball going 295 yards. So I think it's something, and if you look at my resume, and Jason Glass and I always get, put into the same bucket as, we're golf fitness guys. Well, when it comes down to it, Jason's an expert on, rotation and power development and screening. I spend more of my time on screening and developing basic movement patterns so that a golfer has the foundation to do the explosive stuff that I just mentioned Jason is an expert at. So I'm a different type of trainer than most. And, a lot of my athletes that I work with don't get to explosive power development with me all the time because we have to correct all these fundamental movement patterns before it. And walking to me is one of them. If you can't walk, by no means should you be playing golf, because it's a lot more vicious, it's a lot more explosive, and it requires a lot more coordination than just simple walking. So I'm just asking people to pay more attention to it, and you'd be surprised at the benefits. And I'm not just talking about physical benefits. There are mental benefits that go along with walking, disease benefits. And, that in itself could tie right into your practice question, how do pros practice differently? Well, to me, I think that's a huge difference in the difference between amateurs and professionals. So professionals tend to have a purpose to when they're practicing.
Simply stated.
Yeah. Everybody says the answer's in the dirt. Well, maybe it is, but you got to find the section of dirt that you have to go to get the answer. And just beating balls doesn't really have a purpose. I mean, our golf pros are doing a lot of combination of what we call block and random practice. Block is repeated movements to, for lack of a better word, ingrain a new technique or a mechanic that you learned. Whereas random practice is more of a technique that's used to put you closer to a game situation so that you can physiologically change your mindset, your routine, your physics to adapt to a situation that you need, such as hitting a driver dogleg right, and then 3 minutes later having to hit a 7-iron 175 yards into wind over water. Golf, you have to change every shot. There's no two shots that are the same unless you hit it out of bounds. So what we're looking to do is develop our golfers' ability to adapt, react, and make good decisions, and that's where the random practice comes in. But if you look at a typical range, Jeff, 100 balls out in front of you, and they're gone in less than 60 minutes.
Yep.
So you want to torture somebody, an amateur, put down 15 to 20 balls and say, we have, during this 1 hour golf lesson, that's all the balls we're going to hit. And it's amazing how difficult that is for an amateur, because they just don't have any comprehension that how are we going to spend an hour and only have 20 balls? For some reason, they've equated a 60-minute lesson with 120 balls, a ball every half a minute. I don't know where it came from, but it's the truth. And Jason, I'll bring this back to Jason. He makes a good point. Whereas fitness, many people have equated a 60-minute training session to, can you make me puke in a bucket? And if you can't, you're not a good trainer.
Right.
You're not a good trainer, or you're not a good therapist. But I challenged that notion. Yesterday I sat on the range at the Grand watching about 8 or 9 tour players getting ready to practice. And I am telling you, in between shots, we were looking at 4 to 5 minutes, talking to coaches, just backing off, laughing, and I couldn't believe it, because when you draw the comparison to tour golf, that's the exact amount of time that's in between shots. You hit a drive, 3 to 4 or 5 minutes later, you're hitting your next shot. So what they're doing subconsciously. Sorry, Jeff, I just got a little cut off there.
No, that's all right.
So you're developing the ability to practice as you're going to play, whereas amateurs don't. I think that's the biggest difference. Pros practice how they're going to play. Amateurs practice how they're going to practice.
Well, let me ask you this, just to give the audience something that they can do tomorrow, because I love that idea of the 15 to 20 balls, and it almost made me cringe thinking only 20 balls in an hour. Because we all just love to get up there and bang them, and we've got a net at our gym, and we'll go through 30 balls in 2 minutes. But so what's a drill that what could they do in that hour with 15 to 20 balls? That's all they get. Is there like a game or some sort of a drill that they could do to utilize that and really get some focused practice that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. This is the first time I've heard anybody in our profession ask this question. And I'll challenge you to think about this from an exercise standpoint too. So we get up to a ball, create a scenario. As a coach, create a scenario, or a player. Driver, dogleg right, water right. All right. So the first step we're going to do, and this is a lot from Pia and Lynn in Vision 54, is get in your think box, if you will, and determine what you're going to do. This is the imaginary place where you create the visualization for your shot, the plan of attack. You gather details, wind, yardage, elevation, grain, all that stuff. And you go through, if you want, your motor rehearsal for the upcoming shot. That can be 30 seconds to a minute and a half for preparation right there. I like to have the golfer speak it out loud so that they can hear themselves saying it and talking about it. And it can be used as a coaching. If you don't like what the golfer said, or you disagree with something, you can say, well, why did you say that? And then that little session turns into 2, 3, 4 minutes. Now, once the think box is done, then we go into the play box. That's crossing another imaginary line where you step into the action zone. And that should be a zone where there is no mechanical thoughts. There's no excessive worrying about yardage, wind, because you've already done your preparation. That's where you get your alignment, your posture set up, you get your club, and you do your stuff. That's what you practice for. You let it go. That's a short period of time. And then here's where I think many amateurs have no clue, is the post-shot follow-up. So you've hit your shot, you've hit your driver, and you pushed it a little bit to the right. It kind of got caught up in the wind and fell just short of the water, but it was very nerve-wracking. So many golfers will respond negatively by saying, you know what, that sucked, this is horrible, or I can't believe I did that. And what that does is sabotages the brain. What I like my golfers to do is objectively look at what just occurred, state the facts, and then maybe talk through a very quick solution so it doesn't happen again, which could be my path was too much to the right, I just kind of blocked it out. Or it could be my torso didn't fire hard enough, so I was late. And maybe do a dress rehearsal, just one or two, just to say, okay, I got the feel. So you don't walk away from that shot, be it good or bad, with a negative mindset. That, to me, that whole process, I said, from think box to play box to post-shot correction, can be a 4, 5, 6 minute process. And with amateurs, I mean, you could take one shot and make that a 15-minute process. Because what it does is slows you down and makes you a critical evaluator of your own game. You're now not reliant on Butch Harmon to teach you how to hit a good shot. You're reliant on yourself. And that's, I think, a huge component of my teachings is I don't want you to have to come to me for exercise or golf instruction. I want you to come to me for advancements in your current exercise and golf instruction, because you are building a foundation of how to monitor yourself. And to me, that's very important. That's very important. So I always go back to a kind of a research. This is a very basic research about the brain. I don't even know if it is research. Can I go over it?
Go for it.
So I think of the brain as a library. All right. So let's think of your golf brain. You have a golf brain library. And, honestly, inside that library, if you've played a lot of golf, there might be millions of files in there, millions of books. The books are divided into 3 sections. The positive golf section, the neutral golf section, and the negative golf section. Now, Jeff, if I asked you, any amateur, which section would typically have more books in it for amateur golfers?
Oh, negative for sure.
Exactly. So we, over the course of time, build up our negative library so much that it ultimately becomes the dominant section in our brain. And the problem with that is that we oftentimes face similar scenarios in golf, and what we do is immediately recall to the negative because that's what the dominant section is. Or, if you will, there's a system in the brain called the RAS. It's a filter. For lack of better words, every second your being is hit with 40,000 pieces of information: light, sound, taste, touch. You can't process all 40,000 because that's overwhelming. So the body can only let in maybe, we'll say 4,000, 1/10. And don't quote me on this, but it is a significantly lower amount than what hits us. The parts that we allow in are controlled by that filter. If that filter switch is set to negative, well, that's the parts that we're going to allow in. And as you know, the more negative we get, it snowballs, it cycles. It's part of the injury phase that we deal with our athletes. I mean, any injury deals with a period of negativity or self-doubt, and we have to work through that or it snowballs and it causes big problems. So I always say to my golfer, if you hit a shot, whether it's good, bad, or blah, you better respond with an objective analysis of your shot. Because if you don't, you're sabotaging your future shots. So here's a simple analogy. If you walk home, you come home from a long day of work, and your wife is sitting in the room, getting dressed. She's putting on her brand new dress, and she goes, "Honey, how does this look?" And you look at her and you say, "Well, honestly, that dress makes you look fat." Okay?
I would never say that, Lance.
You would never say that. But if you say to your wife, "That dress makes you look fat," all right, that would objective person say, "Lance, you just delivered one negative comment to your wife." Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. How many positive comments is it going to take from my mouth to make up for that one comment that I just made?
I don't know if you could ever say enough.
I know, that's the thing. So positive and negative thoughts are not weighed equally. All right, they're not. Negative always has this dominant control over us. So if for every negative thought you put into your golf library, people, you probably have to put 10 to 12 positives in there just to balance it out. So with this practice system I'm talking about, basically your pre-shot routine, your think box, you're creating a perfect shot. So you just uploaded a positive book to your brain. Your actual shot, you have the opportunity to hit a positive, a negative, or a neutral. Okay, that still is up in the air. How you react to it can always be positive or neutral. So you have the choice during the actual shot to react positive or neutral. And then your post-shot routine, it can always be left as a positive and a neutral. So at worst, you would upload one positive, one neutral, and one neutral. That's the worst possible scenario you can ever have with this type of practice routine. And if you do that over and over and over, guess what starts to switch? That filter. And you start letting positive things in. So, I don't know if this is delving into like the purpose-driven life or whatever that book was, The Secret. I don't know, but that's kind of how it is. And I see golfers at the highest level. We always don't see this on TV, but I'll see guys hit terrible shots. I saw Tiger hit some shanks yesterday, and he was laughing. There's no sense in getting angry about it. What you should be doing is saying, okay, what's going on? Why is this happening? And let's address it. That's what he's doing. So hopefully it works.
Awesome. And this is all, a lot of the stuff that, we've had your buddy Dr. Brett McCabe on here, and he's got some great stuff. And it just reminds me so much of what he was talking about. When you go out there, utilizing this objective feedback, you can go out there and not try to avoid hitting bad shots, but you can expect to hit good shots, is I think the quote that he had, which I thought was fantastic. Just the mental mindset that you're in when you're practicing, when you're going out, you're playing competitively. If you don't have those negative memories or negative things pinging at your brain all the time, you're remembering your good shots, or you're remembering that objective feedback of, okay, this is what I wanted to do on this shot. You're just setting yourself up for so much more success. So I loved everything you said there.
Well, and let's be honest, that goes to the gym as well. How many times people come in the gym and just go absolutely brain dead, and you just work me out, and I'll just be here like a zombie. And at the end of the workout, the trainer actually goes through more physical exertion and mental than the client did because they put it on autopilot. I actually challenge my clients during the workout in a similar fashion. All right, we're going to do this exercise. We're going to do some skaters with an upper body rotation and pause at the top. Why are we doing this? Well, it looks like when you skate to the right and upper body rotate, it's like your backswing, isn't it? Yes, exactly. I want you to do 10 of those. And out of 10 backswings, I want to know exactly how you feel like you did. And I'll go through the actual think box, play box, and then post-shot correction with the athlete in the training session because, number one, now they're engaged and they're taking ownership of their own training session or rehab session, if you will. And the more you do that, the better your clients are going to have retention. And you mentioned this earlier. Retention is a big deal. If you don't have compliance or retention or adherence, gosh, you're just bouncing around from one instructor to another, and ultimately it just ends up looking negative on you. So I don't know. I just think these are really important principles that get overlooked.
Well, I'd say we kind of challenge the audience here that next time you are in the gym or next time you're on the range, first I want to challenge you to do the 15 to 20 ball drill that we talked about, because I think that's going to be very, very beneficial. And it's something that I haven't ever had somebody walk through the way to do that. But also next time you're in the gym, next time you're working out, if you're working with a trainer or if you're working by yourself, think to yourself, what's the objective of this exercise? And it doesn't have to be a part of your golf swing. It could just be, this is for my back, just focusing on what you're doing, because you're right, Lance, there's so many times you see people just mindlessly going through the exercise that's on their sheet of paper, or some people just don't have a sheet of paper, don't have any kind of a plan. They just go in and kind of throw some curls in and get going.
We call that willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly. That's exactly what that is. We call it playing tiddlywinks at our gym.
Okay, that makes sense. That is absolutely true.
All right, I've got a couple just personal questions for the Lance man here before we finish up. You've had so many different great experiences, I would imagine, with TPI and with your travels and everything that you guys do. What's one of the most amazing experiences that you've had in your world travels or with your golf? I know you're very much a family man, and everything I see you post is very much appreciative of the opportunities that you've had. So I'm just curious to hear what's an awesome experience.
Well, we've had a couple this year. Jason, Mark, and myself got to go to Beijing, and it was an interesting trip because there was no Greg, no Dave there. It was kind of like, the bosses let the kids out of the nest by themselves. But this time they sent you into communist Beijing, which to me was a scary thing. Going over there was, holy crap, and we're going right to Tiananmen Square, the first day during their national celebration. And wow, was that an intense experience? But intense in a good way because, I quickly just got the impression that these people they're not the evil communists that you may think. These are awesome people, and they were very free, and they were very, democratic in their mindsets, their action. It was awesome to see a different culture in their culture because now there's no hearsay or conjecture about it. I'm witnessing it up hand, first close. And that to me is the coolest part of my job is I get to go everywhere in the world and I get to see firsthand what people talk about. And sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's not. And now I don't have to guess or just go off of what somebody said. I can see it up hand. And the goodness of people is prevalent, whether or not we hear about it all the time. But it's really cool. Went to Tokyo, going to Bogota, Colombia next week. And if anybody's never gone there, wow, what a country that is. Colombia is amazing. And it's a lot safer than a lot of people think. So I'm excited about doing this. So I love traveling. I can't wait till the kids get older enough so I can take them on a couple of these trips because now they're starting to ask questions. Daddy, can we go to London? I'm like, yeah, you're almost ready. So I'm excited. That would be the number one thing that I get to experience, and being able to do it with two of my best friends, Jason and Mark, is priceless. You can't put a price on that. You really can't.
That's pretty cool. And would you happen to have a book or resource that you would recommend? I know we kind of talked about the Vision 54 and some different things. What's a great, doesn't have to be golf related, could just be life related, but a book that you would recommend to the audience?
Oh, that's a good question. That is a good question. I'm a big fan of T and Lynn's books. They're really easy to read. And you kind of touched on it earlier. They give you a lot of take home advice on what to do, and so you don't feel like you're just being lectured to. This is like stuff you can use in life. I've read that book, Born to Run. I don't know, it kind of got me thinking about running and walking and movement. I think that's a really cool book. I think Christopher McDougall wrote it. It just is, it's kind of an expose on long distance running and how different cultures view running and how they do it differently. It goes into the barefoot running, but the overall theme I got out of it was, some people really move, whereas we don't move. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Americans aren't doing so well in long distance running. So that spurred me to start thinking about walking. So I thought that was a cool book for me anyway. So,
awesome. All right, man. And then any last words of wisdom before we cut the lines here?
No, I just say it doesn't matter what your profession is. If you're training, you're a physical therapist, medical, or if you're an instructor of some sort, understand what movement you're trying to obtain out of your athlete and always assess whether or not that movement is where you want it to be. Because we tend to migrate to things that are too high level, too complex prior to establishing good movement patterns. And although it doesn't sound sexy or fun, the end of the day, if we get better movement patterns, you're going to be able to get to that sexy stuff a lot faster with a lot more effectiveness. And that is what the athlete wants. So don't put aside the stuff that may seem boring. You can always make it fun.
And then Lance, where can everybody find you in regards to social media, your website, all that good stuff? good
Well,
stuff.
my social media, my Twitter is LGP_Inc. INC. You can find me on Facebook at Lance Gill Performance and lancegillperformance.com for the website. I'm always on social media. If you have questions, shoot a text over to me on Twitter or Facebook, and I'll get back to you. That's one thing that I really try to do is get back to people. If I don't answer you in a week, shoot me another one. Say, hey, Lance, don't be a jerk, all right? And I'll definitely get in touch with you. So I really appreciate you letting me come on. I'm sorry I talk so much. That tends to happen, though.
That's what we're here for, man. We want the wisdom. But I can't thank you enough for coming on, Lance. You really have been a big inspiration to me and me getting into the golf fitness world, and just kind of trying to share a platform where I can bring on guests like you and share the amazing things that you're doing and the people surrounding you. So once again, thank you so much for coming on, and I know the 18 Strong listeners really appreciate you being here.
Well, I thank you very much, Jeff. You're doing a great job. 18 Strong is killing it, and I look forward to hearing all your podcasts and your questions. So keep it coming. People like you is what the industry needs.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, talk to you soon, bud.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Lance. As I mentioned, just one of the very down to earth, great guys and great personalities in the golf and fitness world. And he's had some awesome experiences, has worked with some of the best players that are around and that are still playing. And, so it's cool to get a perspective from a guy like Lance, who's seen basically everybody under the sun and sees the differences of what the best in the world are doing and how they're applying these different techniques, practice strategies, training strategies to their golf game, and, what the difference is between them and us guys who are not the greatest of golfers, or want to get our games as good as possible, but maybe haven't figured out the best and most efficient ways to get out there and practice. Most of us, most of you guys listening, are very limited in time. You've got families, you've got jobs, you've got careers, and golf is not necessarily the first priority on your list, but it's something that you love and that you're passionate about. And you want to be good at it. You want to make sure that what you're doing is the right ways of going about it. So hopefully you'll take some of the things that Lance talked about. And the big takeaways for me were, just focus more on what you're doing. Take your time. Don't just go out there and bash balls on the range and, hit as many shots as possible, but really think through step by step everything and be objective about your feedback and, give yourself things to think about and things to work on, and don't necessarily expect the worst or beat yourself up because of bad things that you did, but objectively look at it, figure out how you can correct it, and then go about making improvements from there on out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I know I did, and I look forward to catching up with some more awesome guests coming up in the future. We've got some good ones scheduled up in the next few weeks, so look forward to catching you guys next week. Don't forget, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
I was actually listening to one of your episodes today, and I almost spit my water out in my car when Jason said something about putting the dink in the belly button, or maybe that was his pelvic powerhouse one.
Yeah, you stick your dink in the belly button. I was drinking wine during that, and I almost choked on it. And he had to keep talking because I was like, what the hell did you just say that for?